Good morning, everyone. This is Chris from HashRelay.net, bringing you another early morning market update. But first, a bit of news. The state of Arizona is wanting to allow people to pay their taxes in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, and they'd like to accomplish this by the year 2020. Now, according to the new federal tax bill, cryptocurrencies will be taxed anytime a trade is done, and all of the gains on your cryptocurrencies are going to be taxable events. So to pay your taxes in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies makes very little sense. If we look at the dollar index, and I've pulled this up on TradingView, this simply marks the strength of the USD. Looking over the past year, we can see that we have had a substantial decline in the strength of the dollar, whereas the past year in Bitcoin has seen a 20x gain and then a 60% reduction. But overall, still mostly on a strong uptrend. But you can see the valuation of the dollar, if we go ahead and measure this, has lost about 12%. And the value of Bitcoin, just over the past month, has lost a total of almost 70% in just the past few months. Now we are still up. We are still up 700% from the middle of April 2017 until now. And those kinds of gains and losses make cryptocurrencies very risky to pay your taxes in. If you paid your taxes in April of last year, when Bitcoin was at $1,600, then by the end of the year, when Bitcoin was at $16,000, you have lost 10 times the value of Bitcoin. Or, another way to put it, you have paid the government 10 times more than your tax bill at the end of the year. Now, will you get the returns back from the government on the increase in Bitcoin versus what you paid them in taxes? No. No, you will not. So if we look at the dollar index over the past 40 years or so, we can see that it's been on a substantial decline, meaning that the strength of the dollar has not been at a peak since 1985. So every year, your dollar is worth less and less, and the value or the strength of the dollar is based on how much currency is pumped into the market. And here you can see they put in some gray lines for when the Federal Reserve pumped massive amounts of cash into circulation. And subsequently, every time they do, you can see a significant reduction in the value of the dollar. And the Federal Reserve basically has unlimited access to printing as much of the USD as they want. Bitcoin, on the other hand, has a fixed supply of 21 million, 4 million of which are lost or gone. And since value is determined by supply and demand, Bitcoin's value is going to be based solely on demand, since its price, or since its supply is fixed. The US dollar has an ever-increasing supply and circulation, and so it has to keep demand very high to account for all of the printed dollars, or it loses value. And as we can see in this chart, demand for the US dollar compared to its supply peaked in 1985 and has been on a massive decrease ever since. So paying your taxes in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is inadvisable. Now, I'm no tax expert, and I will say you have to pay your taxes. You must pay your taxes. It's the law. Don't go to jail over some stupid tax evasion. But do not pay your taxes in Bitcoin. If you were going to pay your taxes in a cryptocurrency, I suppose Ripple or Tether would be some good options. But other than those, it just doesn't pencil in. And we know that the crypto markets are going to go up as a whole. And if you wanted some confirmation, we can look at the top stocks by dollar volume. Here you can see the market cap, most of the big names that you know. But if we look at their volume, you can see that nowhere in here is Nvidia, but based on the dollar value, Nvidia is sitting at number 4. Now, why is this important? This is important because graphics cards are used for mining cryptocurrencies. And over the past couple of years, Nvidia has put out and subsequently had a shortage of some of the most high-end graphics cards. And a lot of this is likely due to people wanting to mine cryptocurrencies. And if we look at industries, we can see that internet services tops the industry level, followed by banking. And if we look at the stocks by sector, finance is number 1, and computer and technology is number 2, both of which are heavily influencing the crypto markets. So with these, you can safely assume that being the largest sector, largest industries, and one of the most reliable companies in the space is number 4 in dollar volume. That speaks volumes, as you will, towards the potential growth of the crypto markets. So if we take a dive in and see how these markets are doing today, once coin market cap loads, You can see that we're holding in the ballpark of the $400 billion for the global market cap, almost $22 billion for daily trading volume. Bitcoin has taken about 34% of the market dominance. Bitcoin and Ethereum are over 8,800 respectively. Ripple's finally back above the $1 mark. But for the market as a whole, you can see that there are some red numbers going most of the way down. Single-digit red numbers today as opposed to double-digit numbers from last night, which is a good sign. And if we go to on-chain FX, we can see that still fewer coins are above the 50% down from all-time highs. So we're getting a little bit of uncertainty in the market over the past couple of days. And if we head into the charts, you can see that Bitcoin, while it did break out of this downtrend line for yesterday's candle, it looks like it's trying to slip back down under the short-term downtrend line here. Never could break through this uptrend line, so that is a fairly bearish indicator, and if it breaks back below this downtrend line, it will be a strong bearish indicator. Now we still have two uptrends to go through, but the significance of this long-term downtrend line is pretty heavy, and if we don't find a way to consolidate soon, at worst case, we may be looking at $4,500 Bitcoin by tax season. This is still no reason to pay your taxes in Bitcoin. If we look at the MACD, we can see that it has tested but not broken through this yellow line. We want to see it break through, but it could very well fail. This will be a third failure if it comes back down, which typically it'll fail. Typically the MACD will show two failures and then a good breakthrough, but the more times it fails crossing over the yellow line on this MACD, the stronger the push is for it to come back up over. So we'll be looking for it to make its way through and come back to positive, but we'll need a couple more days for confirmation, I think. Here we can see the RSI is angling down back under this 40 line, but it hasn't dipped down to touch the 30 yet. It may get a bounce off of that before coming back up. Thank you, TradingView. Ethereum, much the same, has fallen out of this short-term uptrend line, though it has broken out of its short-term downtrend line. It has tested it once and come back up. So that's some positive news for at least some consolidation for Ethereum. We'd like to see them continue in this sort of triangle here, maybe push on over to this intersection where we'll be looking at still holding on to the $800 mark of Ethereum in the beginning of March if it makes its consolidation over to here. We do have more levels of an uptrend to support Ethereum than we did for Bitcoin, so that's a positive sign there. We're really looking for it not to break through this short-term downtrend line. Now we've gotten a bit of flattening out on the MACD. Still hasn't come up to test the yellow line, but we'll be looking for that. You can see the histogram bars are shortening pretty well. Again, a slight dip in the RSI down from this 50 mark. It may come back down to touch off the 30 and bounce back. So we're going to be looking for it to go one way or the other for some additional confirmation as well. Litecoin has broken out of its downtrend line, but it has also broken out of its short-term uptrend line. So we're getting a little bit of uncertainty here in Litecoin. We want to see it pick up off of this downtrend line and bounce back up over at least this longer-term uptrend line. We had a much nicer crossover on the MACD yesterday. It looks like it's angling back towards the yellow line here. Could cross back into the negatives in the next couple of days if it doesn't pick up some strength. We are angling back down on the RSI, getting closer to this 40 line. I'd like it to bounce back up to that 50. But with the weakness in the market here and losing this uptrend, it's going to have to work a little bit harder. There's a lot of resistance here. So we're keeping an eye on Litecoin and hopefully breaking out of this downtrend line, which it's held for several months, will be enough to push it higher into this uptrend. NEO again showing some weakness against the pressures from the previous all-time high. Now I switched the previous all-time high to a dashed bar and the current all-time high to a solid bar so that it's a little easier to understand what I mean by the previous all-time high. But you can see that no candle has closed from the previous all-time high since the beginning of February. So though it's tested it a few times, it hasn't been able to break above that point. And if we go, the farther we get to or into February, the stronger the pressure on this downtrend line is going to be. So we'd like to see some strong moves here if we're going to get past the resistance of this all-time high and the downtrend line to come back up and test the current all-time high. So long as we stay above this uptrend line though, NEO should be looking just fine. We do have a little bit more divergence on the MACD here, which is a fairly bearish sign, getting a little bit of an extension on the bars here in the histogram. We did flatten out on the RSI and we are still above the 50 line, so we need to hold that mark to keep ourselves with some strong upward momentum for NEO. Going over to Steam, it looks like it's bounced off of this uptrend line. I still expect it to consolidate up into this intersection here, at which point it can go ahead and break through this downtrend line if it wants. Getting a tiny curve down from the yellow line on the MACD, but the histogram still looks fairly flat. RSI looks like it's dipped barely to touch this 50 line, so that could be a good level of support to bounce off and continue this uptrend at very least, so that should be a positive news for Steam. Komodo is continuing its consolidation in line with where we were yesterday, still looking to come over and consolidate to this intersection here. Again, fairly flat, narrow channel on the MACD, some flat short bars on the histogram. We're seeing a mini curve down on the RSI, bit away from the 50 line, so we'd like to see it touch up a bit there. Bitcoin is very close to its downtrend line here, so not much more of a upward push will break it through this downtrend, which would be great. We do still have this long-term downtrend line though, which is going to hold some serious pressure on it. We did break above the MACD. We are keeping above it today. We still got an additional bar on the positive side of the histogram, but it looks like the RSI is taking a trip down to the 40 line. Hopefully it can sustain itself or pick back up to the 50s so that we'll break through this downtrend line. Quantstam's seen a little bit of a positive view today. Yesterday it had a pretty strong red candle. Today it's bouncing back up a bit. We're still quite a ways above this downtrend line. This uptrend line. And we are consolidating closer to this downtrend line. We did get an attempted crossover on the MACD. Very short bars on the histogram here. And we've curved back up above the 50 line a bit, so that may be a good bounce to show some strength for Quantstamp. Lumen is also consolidating some more. Probably going to get into this intersection here at the 4,500 Satoshi mark before the middle of the month or so. We are seeing some downward movement in the MACD still. Very narrow channel under this yellow line. Still some pretty flat bars on the histogram. And mostly flat on the RSI. Still sticking just below that 50 line. So not too much more support for that. And it could definitely push up out of this short-term downtrend line. And we'll be looking for that in at least the next couple of days. Moving on to Cardano, we can see that it's at the decision point here. The long-term downtrend has finally met this middle uptrend. The candle's sitting right in this pocket here, so we're gonna definitely be able to determine the movements of Cardano in possibly the next few hours, but definitely tomorrow. We'll see whether or not it's gonna have some upward momentum or if it's going to get pushed down in this channel some more. MACD looks like it's maybe flattening out a little bit. Still a very narrow channel, downward motion, very flat bars in the histogram. We have tipped back down towards the 40 line on the RSI, so we'd like to see it bounce off of this to push through the downtrend and continue on this uptrend line. And we should see this happen either today or tomorrow. ELF showing some more weakness, coming ever closer to this uptrend line, pulling a little bit further away from the downtrend line. You can see on the MACD we're getting some even further divergence from this yellow, a little bit longer lines on the histogram. Though we have flattened out on the RSI, we're not pulling back anymore. We have dipped below the 50 line, so we're going to be looking for it to come back up above that before we see any bullish signals for ELF. And for the last coin today, I'll be looking at Poet. We can see that it's broken out of its long-term downtrend, which is a good sign, but we're still seeing a bit of negative pressure here. We'd like it to bounce up off of this uptrend line, possibly trade in between this channel for the uptrend lines. We're seeing the MACD flatten out quite well. Still hasn't tested this yellow line. We're pretty flat on the histogram bars. We get a little bit of a negative slant on the RSI, holding just under this 50 mark. So in order to get some good push, we'll need to see it bounce up to this 50. And doing so will probably help it trade right along this uptrend. So that'll be it for the update today. If you found any of this useful, go ahead and like, share with all your friends. And go ahead and click on that subscribe button. Click the notification bell so you're updated every time I post a new video. And if you're on Steam, go ahead and upvote, re-Steam, and follow me. And I'll definitely follow you back. So remember, pay your taxes for Bitcoin, but don't pay your taxes with Bitcoin. This is Chris from hashrelay.net. As always, I'll talk to y'all later.